Welcome back to Sex and Space, where we explore sex across all of its infinite dimensions. Today we have a truly amazing interview with Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers, an amazing author, an expert in sexual shame and intimacy. Real quick reminder to check out sexandspace.com/books. At our latest release, How to Talk with Your Kids About Porn. It's been called the most comprehensive and accessible book on porn, based in science, out there. You can also support us by subscribing here, smacking that like button, visiting our merch store at sexandspace.com/shop, and following us on Instagram and TikTok at sexandspace.com. That's all one word, sexandspace.com. Every like, share, subscription helps us continue to bring you great content. Now let's dive on in with our interview with Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers. Dr. Sellers is an author, she's a behavioral scientist, she's a licensed marriage and family therapist and associate professor at Seattle Pacific University. We discuss sexual shame, its origins, the role of religion, effective parenting strategies. Let's get into it. Hello, Dr. Tina. Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers, actually. Welcome to Sex and Space. Thank you very much for...
Thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here with you.
It is the privilege is all ours. I can't wait to talk to you. I've been excited about this one. This is covers many topics that I'm super interested in, parenting being one of them, religion also being interesting. But yeah, before we get into all the exciting stuff, I'd love to know about your journey and how you got to where it is and what you're doing, in your own words. Take it away.
Yeah, it's a circuitous journey. It's a journey whose sort of center thread is I follow my heart and what feels compelling, and usually has to do with the human condition. So I started out teaching junior high because I love adolescents, and I think they're particularly wise when we just bother to listen. And then while I was doing that, I realized that a whole lot was getting in the way of their learning, and that had to do a lot with what was happening at home. I was teaching at a very privileged school, but kids in homes can cross, socioeconomic lines. And so I thought, gosh, I want to be able to intervene at the family level. So I went back to grad school and studied marriage and family therapy. While I was there, I started looking at sort of our medical system in the United States and how poor it is, and how can we really help people who are dealing with the impact of illness or life having an impact on their body. And so I spent years running programs around that, teaching in an MFT program, all of that. And while I was doing that, while I was teaching, while I was a professor, we had a state requirement for licensing as an MFT that you needed to take a sexuality class. Now, I had done that when I did my degree, and then I got hired at the university I just graduated from, and they were like, why don't you teach that class? And I'm like, brand new, and I'm like, I would love to. I taught it to junior hires, like I would love to, but isn't there somebody more senior that would rather do it? And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. Like, hell no, we don't want to teach that class. And I'm like, okay, well, for me, that's like so fun and it's so important. So I started teaching that in the early 90s. And I had what I think even at that time I didn't recognize. I had grown up in a pretty rare kind of home for an American kid. My family, my extended family, were all Swedish immigrants, and they came from a long line of people that got sex education, that were taught that bodies are bodies and bodies are good no matter how it is or how old it is or shape it is. If it's getting up and you get to do things with it, it's a good body. Yeah. And so I just thought everybody had a family like that, where you could ask your great aunts and your grandparents and your parents anything, and they would like stop and take it seriously and give you the info, And so to me, it was just such a good topic to teach. And so as I taught it, though, I have a real strong belief that you're only ever as good a therapist as you know what your own stories are. And what I did start to pick up was that so many people in America didn't really know the whole narrative of their sort of sensuality unfolding, sexuality unfolding, relational intimacy unfolding. They just could tell me stories like, oh, I remember getting in trouble at 5, or I remember my first kiss at this age, or whatever, And I thought, well, that's not a story. That's not an arc, right? So I had as one of their assignments to write their sexual autobiography. And of course, they were all freaked out about this. And so we made the class one of the last classes of their degree. And I'd be like, yeah, I get it. I get it's really hard to commit that. But that's also a reflection on the culture that we're growing up in, is that if you feel like your story isn't just a story with all its ups and downs and whatever, it's not just like a valuable story of you, like all your stories, then we've done something to that area and you're ashamed of it, or you're afraid of it, or you're afraid to be judged by it, or whatever the deal is. And so I just started reading those in the early 90s, and right around the year 2000, I started to see this dramatic increase in what I later came to call sexual shame. And for some, it was religious sexual shame. And this was this like deep sort of hatred and disgust about themselves and their bodies and their wants and desires and their thoughts and feelings and what they had done and what they hadn't done. And yet what I was reading in their stories was fell inside the arc of common, right? And so I'm like, the storyline isn't changing enormously, but how they feel about themselves is changing a lot. And their own ability to recognize sort of developmental processes also, like they were just ignorant. Sweet pea, nothing's wrong with you. You were right on task. You were right on time,
Yeah.
But they didn't know it. And so I got really confused about what am I seeing? What has been shifting in culture that I missed, such that I've got whole hosts of 25, 30-year-olds who just feel terrible about their sexualities and their bodies and all of it, and are really ignorant about how they work and how wonderful they are. And so that really caused me to make a shift. I'd been doing so much research in medicine, and I just said, I need to understand this. So I just started researching it, from what my students were experiencing to clients to what had been written, what hadn't been written, all of that. And in 2006, I wrote an article, because I was asked to write an article on this, in a journal called Theology and Culture. It was the intersection of theology and culture. It's called The Other Journal. And I just wrote about what I'd been seeing. Like I've been seeing this, and something is playing into this, something in culture. The church is somehow behind this in some way. I don't entirely understand it yet. But it's hurting people, and the symptoms that people are showing are symptoms you often see in somebody who's experienced childhood sexual abuse. So something is happening here, and we need to understand it. I started hearing from people literally around the globe. And I thought, okay, I've tapped on a nerve. I need to spend more time here. And so I just started really working on that, trying to understand it and getting to the bottom of it, really. I wanted to understand, how did we do this? How did we create this? How long has it been going on? All of it. And that's, when I started doing the work towards the book, Sex, God, and the Conservative Church, Erasing Shame from Sexual Intimacy, which took me 11 years to write. It didn't come out till 2017.
11 years. Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's so interesting, that concept of shame that must have come through in that work. Is that something that you sort of found was the common thread as you sort of drilling down through all the layers of all these stories, shame and what you came to class as sexual shame?
Yeah.
Is that common thread?
Absolutely. So Brene Brown around this time was also coming forward with her definitions and research on shame. And she was talking about a lack of feeling like you belong, or that you're worthy of love and belonging, right? And so what I was seeing was that, but also as it had to do with my worthiness, not just to me, but my worthiness to you, especially intimate other. And so people were wearing masks to pretend, but then if somebody fell in love with them, they would say, well, they aren't really loving me. They're loving the mask that I'm presenting. If they knew the real me, they wouldn't love me, right? And we didn't at that point, just later 2017, so not the whole time I was writing the book, we didn't have an operational definition in research for sexual shame. And there was a PhD student at the university that I taught at who had come to me several years earlier, and she said, she knew my work, and she said, I really wanted to do my dissertation on religious sexual shame, but there's nothing out there just on sexual shame. So I'm going to need to start there. And I said, that would be a gift to all of us because we need things written in black and white and published, right? And so just a couple of months after the book came out, her definition of sexual shame came out, and her dissertation was published. And it's so spot on of what you're seeing manifesting in people's life. And I'm happy to share that with you and your audience if you want it. But it's what you realize when you look at the definition of sexual shame, the operational definition, is how much it impacts a person's ability to do attachment well, especially intimate attachment well. And when I look at that definition, I think, I don't know how we could hurt someone more than to hurt their ability to give and receive love. Because that's what you care about at the end of your life, right? You care about how well you did that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting to unpack. I think I'd love to unpack it a bit more because shame broadly, sexual or otherwise, is a very interesting emotion. Is it an emotion?
Yeah, I would say it is an emotion.
It is an emotion. And does it serve a purpose anywhere in our lives?
Good question. I want to separate the difference between guilt and shame because I think a lot of times they get conflated and they are different. Yeah. So guilt is when I do something against my own ethic code, right? So if I'm 5 and I believe that lying isn't a good thing and I choose to lie, then the emotion that I'm feeling is guilt. And what we know from research is guilt is actually motivating of change. That when I feel guilty, it feels so bad, I think, I don't want to do that again. Shame emerges when we've been getting in trouble from someone we love and we admire, and often who has power over us, when we're just being ourselves, when we're just being us. We're not doing anything in particular that we think is anything other than being us. So it could be, a 3-year-old carrying a slippery glass bottle of milk and it slips out of their hand and goes on the slate floor and goes everywhere, and a parent comes unglued, right? Yes, that's a mess. Yes, that's frustrating for sure. And that child was just doing the best 3-year-old thing they could do, right? Absolutely. And that happened. And so with sexuality, what we have to realize in highly religiously contexted and sort of white power contexted colonizing countries, what we see is this real silencing and shaming around bodies and sexuality. Well, when you're a year old, now you can grab something with your hand, right? It's not just like, oh, what's that thing? I'm looking at, but you actually can do something with it, right? And somewhere around a year old, when you're getting your diaper changed or you're in the tub or whatever, you're going to find your genitals. And that is going to be a great day for you, right? Because we have this pack of so many wonderful nerve endings on that part of our body. It's just a matter of time, usually not real long, before the child is like, oh, I've got that place on my body that feels really comforting to touch. And so they start touching it. When they're watching TV, when they're getting a book read to them, when they're in the grocery line, I don't know, just like wherever they think about it, right?
Yeah.
This is natural. This is developmental curiosity and comforting, self-comforting of yourself, just like hanging onto that corner of the blanket, rubbing it against your cheek, whatever. They are prone, because they're human, they're prone to connection and pleasure. They come out of the womb seeking connection and pleasure, right? The milk's not there, but they're rooting for it, right? They're trying to get at it, right? Connection and pleasure. You can walk down the halls of an Alzheimer's unit and you cannot have memory, and you will see people seeking connection and pleasure. It is a core human condition, right? And so you've got that year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old who has come to really love this part of their body. If they're in a home where somebody isn't giving them instruction and just saying, yeah, buddy, that's your penis. It's a wonderful part of you, just like your ears and your eyes and your nose, like all the things we're learning about, Or as they get to be 3 or 4, like, yes, that's a fabulous part of your body. And here's something we're going to talk about. When we want to touch that part of our body, anybody in our family, in fact, outside in our neighborhood too, they go into their bedroom or the bathroom because it's private. And so you're going to get to learn to do that too. And so I might remind you every once in a while, whatever. But it's just another thing you're teaching on, right? But instead, the experience of most people really early is somebody that they love gets really angry, right? They go, they make a big face, they make a big noise, they go, gross, that's dirty, they slap their hand away, they do any of number of things that are not typical when they're in a more non-reactive, loving space. And so the child begins to clock these situations that happen hundreds of times before they're 5, and they have really started to figure out, like you ask somebody, when was the first memory that you have? And people often say, it's about 5 and I got in trouble for playing doctor. And that wasn't the first time. That was the first time their cognitive ability to record a memory really stuck, right?
Yeah.
So there were hundreds and hundreds. So what was that child starting to digest or metabolize every single time they're just being them and they're getting in trouble from someone they love? It starts to form the idea that something is fundamentally wrong with me and it's connected to my body. And I don't know what to do about that. I just know it's not okay with the people that I love. Kids just go underground. Of course, it doesn't go away because it's core to the human experience. They just go underground and they don't share it with their parents.
Yeah.
There's a really fabulous book out there that I often will recommend called Not Under My Roof by Amy Shallett. She grew up in Holland. She came to the US and did studies. She decided to compare homes in 2 cities in Holland, in the Netherlands, and then 2 cities in America around how kids talk about, understand, work with their parents or don't, whatever, around the unfolding of their sexuality in adolescence. When you see those side by side, what happens in Holland, so Holland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Iceland, the Netherlands, all of those have incredible comprehensive sex education programs. You compare that to a country that does not, and where there's a lot of fear and reactivity. And the primary difference is in the countries where it's open and non-reactive, kids actually rely on their parents all the way through their adolescence.
Oh, okay.
Like they talk to them about like, do you think I'm ready? I've been seeing so-and-so, and what does readiness look like? I mean, they talk about everything versus a child that goes underground at 5 and stays underground. And that's what we see in other countries like America.
Yeah. And does that have a correlation to things like unwanted teen pregnancies and, all this kind of stuff, self-harm and all, yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So you don't have the information. So where are you getting the information? You're getting it from friends and media, right?
Yeah.
Pornography. You're getting it from places that are fantasy, not reality, but nobody's giving you reality. So you don't develop the ability to know what you think and feel, where your body begins and ends, autonomy, and someone else does. Why it's so important that we respect our own yes and no and other people's yes and no. I don't understand exploitation because it happens on TV all the time, but nobody's helping me learn it. Nobody's helping me develop media literacy. And so somebody really, really nice is really, really nice to me. And I think what they're saying is true, but actually they're trying to exploit something in me. And they have no ability because no one has prepared them. No one has equipped them to manage the outside world. And so the outside world has its way. And so way higher teen pregnancy rates, higher STI rates, higher abuse rates and rape rates, and people who are both hurting, who don't mean to hurt because they don't know boundaries, they don't know yeses and nos, they haven't been taught any of that, and also people being hurt, right? And like I have often said, I think that our statistics around sexual assault are really low because in the last decade, I haven't talked to anyone under 40, any woman under 40 who can't tell you at least one time that she had a sexual experience she did not want.
With a with
with
an
anyone.
uneducated partner or any,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
anybody. Yeah.
Exactly. Not all bad people by any stretch, but they didn't talk ahead of time. They didn't know to do consent. Everybody was believing that they could understand the other one without any speaking. And then as lines started getting crossed,
Yeah.
often the person with the less power is like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to go along with it and get out of this situation because I don't want anything bad to happen. It's
Yeah.
not good for anybody. It's just
No.
not good for anybody. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very interesting just to think about, all those modern factors contributing extra, layers of complication to this, like, yeah, culture, media, I guess even things like, modern sort of family dynamics and structure and all those kind of things, pornography. I mean, it's all there. But how have we got here?
We haven't chosen to get it right. And I think that there are political and socio-political meta narratives that have been alive for a long time. But what's happening, I think, in America in more recent years is people are using them as a platform with which to keep themselves in power, right? And so this belief that sex education or comprehensive sex education, which most people, by the way, don't know what's in comprehensive sex education, what it looks like at a 5, 8, 10, 12, they don't know, they have no idea, but they're scared, their ignorance is taken advantage of by people who are saying how it's going to ruin and destroy your children. It's going to have them get involved with things sooner than they would, and
Yeah.
nobody in that at that same level of public figure is really challenging that in a loud kind of way. Like, wait a minute, where do we get the idea that if we don't teach our children, they're going to be safer? We
Somehow
would
they'll
never
figure it out.
hand them keys at 16 and say, you know what, you're now ready to drive on the
Yeah.
freeway today.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
would never
Or
do that, and yet
here's $1 million.
somehow.
Go invest this $1 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And yet, this is the same line of thinking that keeps being propagated by people when there's absolutely not only no research to support it, there is research to support that if you do not educate your children in all of these myriad of areas that have to do with emotional intelligence, relational intelligence, intimacy, body, all of it, if you don't give them that education along the way so that they're good to do it, that they are going to be ill-equipped to develop intimate relationships that are meaningful and supportive of their thriving, right? So, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and I often, when I had people write that paper, I would have them go back 3 generations and just find out something. What was Grandma's childhood like? What did she learn, or he learn, or Grandpa learn? Blah blah about sexuality. And what you find is you're going to find people inside this very colonized way of thinking about bodies and sexuality that they talked about it as religious, although it doesn't have a root in Christianity actually, but it does have a root all the way back to the 4th century in Empire Christianity, when
Right.
people were chosen to be leaders of the new church by Constantine, who was the emperor, because they were denying the body, and who was denying the body the best.
Right.
And that was how they were vying for who was more spiritual. That has nothing to do with Christianity. Not a single thing. And when they couldn't do it, when they would mess up because they're human, they blamed the women.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
We are still doing that today. Well, what was
Yeah.
she wearing? Was she drinking? So it's very much this idea that has kept men in power, men not taking responsibility for their actions, men blaming women, and it's very different from early Jewish, ancient Jewish teaching. Desire was seen as good. It was seen as the breath of God. It was seen as the most alive part about you, the part that helps you create and be innovative and do cool things with your life, that are unique to you. And yes, there's going to be times that you're going to desire something that's not going to be in your best interest or the best interest of whoever you're involved with. And at that point, you need to exercise discipline. That doesn't make desire bad. That's an invitation to responsibility. Like, make sure that your desires, your wants, make sure they serve love and justice in the world. That's all. You
Yeah,
can do
why
that.
not? Yeah,
You
yeah,
can be
as opposed to
responsible.
completely deny them.
Right, which
Yeah.
of course has not been successful at all. And it's made something beautiful. Desire is beautiful. It's beautiful when we see it in children. It's beautiful. We've made something beautiful and life-giving, really our erotic energy. We have made that fundamentally bad rather than focusing on how do you manage your energy, your erotic energy, your desires to create. How do you manage that? That's a much more interesting, nuanced conversation, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of just even me thinking about this conversation and looking at your work, the subtle ways that shame, I think, influences our sort of sexual experiences. And this is just me unpacking it, whilst thinking about this, these ideas I was sort of having in the shower, just around, denying your authentic desires to a certain degree, or that inability to kind of be, authentic, or the seeking of pleasure and the shame around that. I mean, these are common. These are what you found common threads still in that
Absolutely.
research.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've gone ahead, because we made desire bad, then we made people question who they were. Because we told them basically, well, you can manage. I mean, you can stop those desires. Those desires are not good. You can stop them from now until you get married or whatever. Well, no, that was never true. That was like asking somebody not to breathe, not to want, not to desire connection and to share connection and pleasure with somebody that's human. And so they started to feel like, yes, that does show that I'm bad, right? And so since I'm bad, that then invites me to create a false self. There's no authenticity there, right? There's no celebration of the authenticity of a person, right? And we've made pleasure bad because any desire that has pleasure, which again, like I've said, you're born, you're going to be doing that immediately, right? If you're a healthy little infant. So we've made that, we've turned out and made that seeking of connection and pleasure and all of that, we've made that bad. So now I don't know how to be human. I don't know how to be me. I can be who I think you want me to be. But what we
Yeah.
know as we listen, especially to people who are like non-binary, trans, gay, whatever, who are different than the dominant discourse of, cis, het, straight, the whole thing, is that when people try to be over a long period of time someone they're not, it like hurts their soul, it hurts their heart. And there are people who are like, I am not going to do that anymore. I have to be me. This is the one life I have. I am going to be me. And that's what they've been showing us over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
you set yourself free when you decide to be authentically yourself, while still being mindful of the how you move in the world, but that the way you move is authentically coming from your heart and soul. So yeah, it hits, I think, again, at those just root places where we experience joy.
I'd like to just stop rabbiting on myself, my own boring anecdotes, but the other cultures where shame and sexuality are not intertwined. Did you find in the cross section of people that you were talking to, or through the research and stuff like that? And I suppose that interesting example of the sort of Hebrew teachings and things like that. Where else can we get good lessons?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, so the second book that I wrote, Shameless Parenting, Everything You Need to Raise Shame-Free, Confident Kids and Heal Your Shame Too, that came about because people were saying to me, I don't want to do to my kids what was done to me. Can you help me? And I'm like, yeah, actually, there's a fair amount of child development information that you need to know so that you can see your kids are being totally fulfilling their job description at 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 and 14. They're being exactly like they're supposed to be. They're
Yeah.
not actually doing this at you or to you. This is how kids learn. This is how we all learned. And you have to shape the education that you're giving them to be age appropriate to where their curiosities are and the language that they understand and that kind of thing. And so Sweden, for example, was a church state forever. Around 1945 or so, there was a family physician, a female family physician, who said the church is wrong in saying there should be no sex education. I'm going to develop a sex education, and she actually rallied a whole huge amount of the public, and they came up against what the church was saying, and they implemented a sex education program that starts at kindergarten and runs through senior year. And
Wow.
it's not just, they don't call it sex education, they call it life education, because
Yeah.
they cover everything they cover gender and power differences and what you have the rights to. They are teaching all the kids how you bathe the baby and why you bathe the baby this way and blah. They're teaching all the stuff about budgeting and just everything, right? It's just
Yeah.
different thing every single year. And and so now we are several generations past that, 4 or 5 generations past that. And so what you end up with is a population of people who actually see bodies and sexuality as a normal part of being human, and that it's not the same for everybody, doesn't need to look the same for everybody, that people don't feel the same about gender across the board, there's a continuum, that people don't feel the same with regard to attraction, who they're attracted to, that's on a continuum, but that there are ways to treat people that are respectful and ways to be treated that are respectful. And they teach those things. So for the 5-year-old, they're learning about respect and listening and body autonomy, where your body begins and ends and someone else's does. When somebody says no, or when somebody says, I don't know, what does that mean? Learning all of those things, recognizing their own feelings, being able to put words to their own feelings, speak up for themselves, making plans, like all this really social, emotional learning and relational learning they get in those first, till they're like 8 or 9. And then they start talking about puberty kinds of things. Okay, there's changes that are going to happen, here's what's going on. And then they get into more complex issues of power and gender and attraction and diversities of how that's expressed in the world and stuff like that. So you end up with people who then are tolerant of differences, who have their own words, can use them, know how to speak clearly and yet respectfully, diplomatically. People who can recognize who they are, what their authenticity is, and then hear how somebody else is different from them. You end up with a society that ends up passing laws that have to do with mutuality. So, it's pretty remarkable that, and there's still pornography, but there's way lower uses of it. And the pornography is not so exploitive against women or misogynistic. It's also not seen as something that replaces intimacy, because there's a recognition that when you are giving pleasure to yourself, that's serving a particular purpose for you. It is not the same thing as connecting with another human. But
Or denying that other person the pleasure. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Exactly. And so now when I am with somebody else and I want to share in that way, then I know that it's about constructing what's going to work for us right at this time around what is connection and pleasure, or what can connection and pleasure look like for us. It's not maybe going to look like it looked like before or yesterday or last week or whatever, because I'm in a different place, you're in a different place. And I may not even be feeling the need to move through my arousal cycle, because I could take care of that on my own, but I can't get this kind of connection where your heart is open, my heart is open. I can't get that without us coming to each other authentically and
Yeah.
honestly, right? And sharing that. So you just, people will go to Europe, some places in Europe. And like, for example, I spent a month in Sweden last year visiting relatives, and it feels different. I mean,
Yeah.
there just doesn't feel like there are taboo topics.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but they're all worried about us. I'll tell you that. As soon as
I
you show
bet.
up there, they're like, "Are you okay? Like, do you?" You know, and we just kind of laugh and just say, "Yeah, we're a mess.
Yeah.
We're a mess."
We are a mess. Well, this is good. This is good news and music to my ears that there are Western cultures that are preparing and successfully preparing their young ones for life in these cultures. My assumption was that we were going to have to go and live some hunter-gatherer lifestyle where we all took our clothes off, were to and paraded around naked just to wash ourselves of all of this shame. But it sounds like Sweden are onto something.
Well, and really
Yeah.
all of those countries are,
Yeah.
I would, when I was teaching my class, the sex class, I'd say to them, I said, if you've got a lot of shame, body shame, because we gave it to you, like we run our economy on you feeling badly about yourself, so you spend more money to
Yeah.
fix yourself. Like,
Yeah.
and this is a horrible thing, but nobody in power who's making money for their stockholders gives a damn about you. So
Yeah.
if you want to do something, and I would say go find a clothing optional beach and just sit there. Just sit and take off as much as you can get away with, you feel comfortable with, and just watch. Because no one is going to be objectifying you.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
going to feel it like, oh my gosh, I feel it everywhere else but here. How weird is that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting, sort of looking through your work and picking up on some of the areas where me, as this enlightened person who runs a podcast about sex, can be getting it so wrong. And so the shameless parenting book, and just like that idea of breaking the cycle, that or not perpetuating the same crap. I mean, give us a sort of overview breakdown of just some of that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
So in answering the question that I was asked, I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it birth to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, up to 18. And I'm going to tell you what are the common emotional tasks a child is trying to accomplish in that phase. What's the common behavioral things you're going to see them do as they're trying to accomplish those things? And then what are the body and sensual curiosities that might emerge at that age? And then I'm going to invite you to do some thinking about how do you think you were treated at this age? And what do you wish you had gotten? I'm going to give you the top books right now in that age, and I'm going to give you the top websites. And I'm going to give you everything that you need, that if you just stay a year, 2 years ahead of your kid, like in the next section that they are right now, do the one they've got, do the one they are in now, and then the next one. Get the books at the library, whatever, read them out loud to them. You're going to get the language, you're going to get everything that you're going to give them what they need, but you're also going to reparent the part of you that didn't get that too. And you're going to start to feel more equipped yourself. And then your kids are going to have more language. And then, so I'm just kind of guiding you. So there's a point I talk about, it's really important that kids are playing around the same age with people around the same age, because as kids get 2 years or more older, they have more cognitive capacity, they're bigger, and they have abilities to manipulate, not because they're bad, they're human.
It's just
We
human.
are hardwired to get what we want, but
Yeah.
when you have an age and size difference with somebody else, you got power to coerce them. And we need to be able to not be coerced. We need protected. We need parents and people to protect us from coercion. And we need people to teach about power to our older kids, like your 8-year-old, he needs to know about how they might have power over the 5-year-old, and then how to then be responsible to that power, right? And so there are things that we need to teach at each developmental stage. And also what I hope for is that parents will go, when their kids are doing things, they don't take it personally. It's not about you. They're just trying to develop. Their brain is trying to grow. Their heart and body is trying to grow. They're trying to figure out the social stuff going on around them. And they just need you to be stable, right? And when we give kids what they need at each age like that, and we let them fulfill their job description, that doesn't mean we let them get away with anything. We can say, dude, you're going to have to find a different way to say that. That's a little bit more kind and respectful. So I'm going to let you go into another room. Come on back and take it again. Let's try it again because I want you to learn how to do this. You're not going to be lazy and, call people names or use bad words. Like you're going to use the language you've been taught to speak, And so we do these little things to just help them, but we're not shaming them for being the age they are. They get to be right? When you do that, then you'll notice that if they decide to have children, you're going to see them struggle much less than you struggled.
Yeah.
Because you gave them a default that has so much more like honest reality in it and appreciation for the human condition, for the desires to connect and show love and be in relationship in healthy ways, that kind of thing. And I say this from a place of real confidence because I'm in a line that did that, and so we have lots of bones in our closet, as lots of families do, but one area that we didn't really struggle in was in the area of bodies and sexuality because we had this long history. And so it just is a place that it was an easy and fun place to parent, where for, so we have 4 and they're all grown now. And we have two granddaughters, but we just didn't struggle there.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they didn't have their struggles. Of course they did, because you're growing up, but we didn't struggle to stay connected with each other through it all. And they actually relied a lot on me as they were growing up because I didn't freak out about anything.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. And I suppose a question around the role of where you see parenting versus that formal sex education. I mean, to me, it's completely combined. I mean, I learned so much from my parents, my grandparents, stuff like that. My formal education, pointless, I would say. What I crashed around through life learning or was sort of, taught by my parents. But do you sort of see that in a similar way? I mean, books like your book, the second book, almost seem invaluable if you are in a country that is hacking away at, good sex education.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many times parents are like, I don't know what to do and I don't have a guide and I don't have anybody sort of pointing the way and I just need some help. And what they're doing at my school is, it's just on reproduction if they're doing anything at all. And they're separating boys and girls, or they're making them feel like they can't somehow be in the space where they learn about each other's bodies. Like, what message are we giving there? And, so they're getting all this stuff. I think it's not as needed when you live in a culture where this is common knowledge. Everything in my book is common knowledge. Then it's not as like, wow, this is so great, because they're already getting it. And I know at one point in Sweden, I don't know if this is true now, but there was a family life educator that could be made available to every family that wanted help.
Wow.
So you just called up a number and said, we're struggling with this topic. Is there anybody that could come sit down with our family? Somebody comes. So it echoes what's happening in school, and it's supporting parents if they're struggling. Like that. for the United States to put money into that, into families like that, would shock so many people because we don't. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
childcare, you can't pay $2,500 a month for childcare. Oh, I'm sorry, bummer for you.
Yeah. It's
You know, it's crazy.
yeah. Oh, don't get me started. It's
I know.
yeah. It's very interesting. And fortunately, right now, here in New Zealand, we just got a lovely new government that is leaning to the right, and
Yeah.
they're having the same response to sex ed, unfortunately,
I'm
putting
sorry.
all the onus back on the parents. And I mean, I completely agree that there is a huge role to be played
Yes.
by parents. No, of course, the resources just aren't there for everybody. And if you're stuck in a loop where the cycle's been perpetuated and you haven't got the right information,
Right.
what's going to happen? I mean, it's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
If you missed out
Yeah.
on the education, it doesn't
Right. I mean, it's
magically
like,
appear.
it would be like saying to, and I don't realize this is a ridiculous thing, but saying to your government, look, if you want to see how this is working, look at America. How well has it been working in America to leave it to the parents?
Yeah,
Our most conservative states have the highest teen pregnancy rate, are still teaching abstinence-only education, which is 80% medically inaccurate. We only have 18 states that require what we teach to be medically accurate, right? And so we're
wow.
leaving it up to parents that are epigenetically, multi-generationally, don't know, only feel shame and don't
Yeah,
know what's true about bodies and sexuality. We are as ignorant now as we were. I remember there was a book that came out in like the 70s, and we actually had better sex education then, and it was called The Joy of Sex, and it came out because they had done a nationwide study and found out how ignorant people were.
yeah,
And this was when we were more informed than we are now.
yeah. So even with access to all of the information that we've got, and are we going backwards? Do you think?
We are definitely going backwards. And I
Yeah.
think people are leaving their learning to people in media who have compelling personalities and are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to spread misinformation and hype and fear. And people are going, oh, that must be true. Oh my goodness. If I let my kid hang out with somebody who's gay or trans, they're going to want to be gay and trans. I mean, that's what they were said on TV. It's like, oh Lord,
Yeah,
could I make you gay or trans if you're not?
yeah. Or could you
No,
just
you're right.
decide to be the
I
other
can't.
just on a whim? Yeah,
Yeah, I can't. Like, at
yeah,
what point did you know that you were straight? At what point did you know you were a boy or a girl? Can you tell me about when? Did that ever really change dramatically for you? And and while some people will say, yeah, I've had some changes, the vast majority of people are like, I remember my first crush and it was this direction and it's kind of stayed in that direction, sort of, or whatever. But people are abdicating their learning, abdicating their critical thinking, abdicating their curiosity, what I'd call courageous curiosity, to people who are getting paid to lie to them. And so,
right.
yes, we're going backwards.
We're going backwards. Goodo. Well, everybody should buy your books then and listen to this podcast. Yeah, I think we've said a couple of times that, especially when talking about sex education, is that it never stops. And
Yeah.
it's been just doing this work. Has been interesting and eye-opening for me and for the other people that I'm sort of involved with this project. I'm sure you found the same.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, so your books are available. They're all on Amazon, is that right?
Yep.
Kindle, audiobook,
Right. And I
hard
often will
copy, all
say,
that
if
stuff.
for any reason you can't afford it,
Yep,
just DM me
yep,
and I'll send you a link so that you can
amazing.
get at it, because I don't want anybody to not have it because they can't afford it, but they want it. So
Yeah,
I'll find a way to get it to them.
yeah. No, that's really cool. But you're right. I think this is a good first step in the right direction.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And they will be rewarded. Their kids, we know that kids get involved with sex later, make safer sexual choices, pick partners that are better for them and more in line with what their values are. They have lower teen pregnancy rates, lower STI rates, higher rates of taking responsibility for their fertility, even boys.
Yeah.
Right? Who are notorious for not taking responsibility. But even boys will begin to take more responsibility. But the thing I love most that comes out of this research, because I love all of that, kids describe themselves as closer to their parents overall. So I'm like, if you want to stay connected to your kids, become their sex relationship intimacy expert.
Yeah.
You know, where you can hear whatever they have to say and be like, yeah, you're learning. Yeah. I can tell you some things that I've learned, but you're going to learn and you're going to make some mistakes. I remember saying to my oldest when they were teenagers, saying, Sweetie, you're writing your sexual narrative. I already wrote mine, but you're writing yours. And I want you to think, while it's still early, I want you to think about how you want that narrative to go, because you're going to want to probably share that narrative with whoever you end up partnering with in your lifetime. And you may want to share it with your kids. So I want you to think about how you want that narrative to go. It's not mine to write, it's yours to write. You know, like just, you know, giving them little pieces that help them take that next step, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think what's great about the approach that you've taken, though, is for me, it feels like under the sort of society, there is a bubbling sort of desire for this information. It's very easy to be led by the fear and all the rest of it and kind of push it to the side. I see it a lot in different parenting groups across different topics and stuff like that. How can I connect? How can I be more present? How can I, be better? I think it's really onto something. And if, you can start to sort of change the direction of that perpetual wheel that would just keep on rolling, that's a very worthy cause. Have you got anything else coming up? Have you got any more books in there?
That's always a dangerous thing to ask me. I recently started an organization called Inanna Rising, INANNARISING.org. Okay. And it is an organization for psychedelic assisted therapists and physicians who are working in that arena, who are, who have been licensed and doing their work and having a practice for a long time, but are now beginning to look at the research and have done training now and beginning to look at how to provide that care. In the United States, the way that we do things, it just tends to be very colonizing. The pharmaceutical companies are going to want to get in there and they're going to make things inaccessible. And so we've created an organization where really high quality clinicians are there to support each other, consult with each other, take trainings together, but we also are pooling our resources. So we have an Indigenous reparations fund, and we'll eventually have a patient equity scholarship fund for people who won't be able to afford it, because it's really about healing trauma. And we have just so many people whose lives are just squished by trauma, and so it's about how do we liberate as many people as possible and make this affordable. So that's what I'm dabbling in right now.
Amazing. Oh my God, you'll be on Joe Rogan in 6 months' time. Don't you worry about that. That is topic du jour. Brilliant. That's great. Oh, that sounds so interesting. Oh, well, I wish I did a podcast about psychedelics now. Well, we could talk about that.
Well, never know.
Yeah, I'll start another one. So I haven't got enough going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you heaps. Good luck with everything. Good luck with that. And
thank you.
Yeah, we will touch base soon. Really hope you enjoyed that one, guys. I know I really did. Check out the show notes. Check out the links in the description below to find more of Dr. Tina wherever you can. Don't forget to leave us a like, a follow, a comment, or review wherever you're tuning in from. Your support means the absolute world to us. Until next time, safe travels. See you on the next episode.